thing. So it gives you the IP address of the printer and the printer in which they need access to. At that point, you do the same thing. You just go in and add the distribution template for that user. And then check to make sure they have a scan drive. Now, in this case, there's no template set up. So I would kick it to Carmine, only because we can configure this, right? But they license per scanner. So we have to make sure that they're licensed to be able to scan. Because we could set this up no problem, but then we're, if it's not licensed to scan, then we're not in accordance with, our contract and things like that. So I just kick it back to Carmine just to make sure that we're okay to scan people. All right. And if he says okay, then at this point we can actually create the repository. So that I can take you guys through that really quick. Now sometimes Carmine would do it. It's generally may not be the best idea. But it's easy for us to just do it. So you set up workflow scanning, file repository setup. You want to have a new one, and call this whatever department it is, which is department name scanning. SMB. You put the IP address of the cluster, not at the actual server, right? So in this case, if we do PS3, that's this. FS3, that's 2.185. We do not want to put that IP address in there. The actual IP address of the cluster is it's 2.242. So that's the IP address that we put in, not of the actual nodes of the cluster. We'll get into the architecture in person. All right, so put that in there. The share is always your scan. Okay. And you put in the username. This is the domain account I was talking about. Domain account username, domain account password. This always system. Okay. And that's how you set up the repository. Done deal. At that point, after you set this up, then you can just go into scanning and start adding distribution lists or templates. All right. Now, and that's really it from the front end of it. So now on the file server, the back end of it, let's get into that. So these are the nodes I was talking about, FS3 and FS4. FS3 is a physical box that sits in the data center. FS4 is a virtual machine. All right, so storage is provided by our SAN. Cluster disk 1 is a quorum disk. Now that quorum disk kind of decides to manage the cluster and who's not. All right, this 2 is the actual data volume. Okay. So if you notice, you see here that it's assigned to, the file share. This is the quorum disk. Now the minimum for the quorum disk is, I think, like 400 megs. So These are provided by SAN storage. So there's two iSCSI connection, two iSCSI drives here, all right, from SAN. All right. Okay. All right. So this is one of the servers that we can use to manage EQ on. It's either this FS1 or Exchange. So if you want to provision new storage, unfortunately you got to jump on one of these boxes because unless you could get yourself in a 10 network, and if you do get yourself in a 10 network, let me know so I can do that too. But yeah, so we manage storage from here. Let's just take a look at that. Okay. What else is there? I guess there's really not much else to it. The cluster is really configured and validated. I'm not really sure what else we'd want to do to it. Now, this is the actual cluster host. This is IP address. So there's 4 IP addresses that are assigned to it. One for each node, one for the cluster, and one for the cluster shared. So the cluster shared is 2.242, this is 2.187, and I don't know the IP addresses of each node. But so if for whatever reason you guys want to go a 3-node tier, you can just come in and add a node here, and it'll manage the cluster. Let's see. So print server is set up the same way. They're really quick. You see these are the 2 connections, the iSCSI connections. You have a quorum, and then you have the node in which, I'm sorry, the disk in which the print spool sits on. All right, and so that's the actual cluster. This is where all the print objects live on. As we see, is right now it's owned by PS3. And same setup. So there's 2 on quantum disk, 1. So let's go to PS3. Yeah. All right. So this is where all the print objects sit on. You see, like this is the spool. These are all your print objects. And this is the quantum disk. So that manages your cluster. The difference between the setup for the files cluster and the prints cluster is that these 2 are physical. why it matters. Doesn't really, but just to keep aware of it. So you actually have to manage the hardware of both. You know what I'm saying? You know, both have open manage on it, so you get alerts for that. But you know, sometimes when they're doing updates, just keep in mind that it's not going to come back as fast as a virtual machine. So, but you know, unless you're doing any OS level or hardware level changes, there's really no need to be in here. Right? You can manage everything from, you know, print management, add printers, remove printers, security groups, all of that, right there. Right? Now, of course, in the case of the printers, it's only one spool. So if that spool gets corrupted, you're kind of out of luck. Now, what I did was, and I'll hand this over to you. So I created a printer migration backup, you know, 600 megs. But this was done back in January, so you want to maybe create another one. But keep in mind that migration takes the printer objects off the print server. So you know you want to do it at a time where you know there could be some downtime, so you can migrate them and then import them back, and then you can just copy the migration. Now, why do you want to do this as opposed to backups? You know, backups don't really differentiate printers from the actual OS, right? The backup is everything. So let's say for whatever reason, you install some crappy drivers on there and you just want to start over, then just put the migration, just import, go out the two servers and import the migration, and you'll be up and running, fairly quickly. That's really it. As far as backups on the file server side, I think we got that handled. Do you have any questions about that? All right. So now, do you want to do the exchange first, or do you want to do the other stuff first?
Well, I have a question about the files.
Yeah.
When people request space.
Yeah, that is all quota based, right? So if you look at let's look at the file server right now. Like, the downside to this is that I put everything on one data volume, which is a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because it's all contained. It's bad because if for whatever reason that volume goes down, that's everything. But at the same time, it's SAN storage, so the likelihood of that is very minimal. On FS1, we had like 5 or 6 iSCSI connections, but it got a little complex and it was difficult to manage, so I just put everything in one. So you're kind of limited by that. This is the most amount of space that I can provision from our SAN. 2 terabytes is the maximum. So if for whatever reason we start getting closer to that 2 terabytes, we're going to have to create carve out a new volume and start moving. Like maybe you want to throw offices on its own volume and keep users on a separate one. You'll have to do that because we can't go above just 2 terabytes. With that said, if a particular department, let's just say, let's look at quotas actually. Okay, so we have some heavy hitters here. Like we're pretty bad, right? So right now our limit is 200 gigs is the hard limit, right? Let's say, for whatever reason we needed an increase, we just go to view, edit quota properties of that, and then change it from 200 gigs to, I don't have anything bigger than 200 gigs, but if I did, I could just go to 300 gigs, hit copy, and there you go, space increase. So to give a easier example, let's say fire safety.
Lisa Douglas wants to increase.
Yeah.
For what department? I mean, she's in student financial services, but what drive?
W drive. No, W drive.
Office drive.
The office drive.
What's that? Is it student account? Is it student financial services?
The office shared drive.
I know they have two: student accounting, student financial services.
I can ask her.
All right, so let's look at one of the others. Okay, so
The department requests an increase in their quota like that. Who's approving?
and, a lot of times, like they'll jump to you first.
Yeah, just
kick them back.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what the current size is and
How much money they want.
sure they're using.
So let's look at this one. All right, so right now they're 2 gigs, 76% used. So in this case, if they want this increase, just edit quota properties, and it could go up to 3 gigs if need be. And now so now they're at 3 gigs. And that's all you do, right? So let's say it's not this, it's something else. So, okay, so they're at 10 gigs, 89%. So I just put the edit quota, and I could go to 12 gigs. Now, you don't want to apply the user quota hard because it does like file checking for extensions and things like that. You just want to stick to the one that doesn't say user, and it's office drive, right? Copy that down, and voila, now they're okay. All right. Anything else?
Exchange with another example. Exchange is from
All right. So exchange. Good luck to you. It's exchange is a piece. All right. Now, okay. So that's something we're gonna have to look at as well. Right now, I disabled the EQ VSS provider and just have the Microsoft writers to see if that stops the problem. So if it doesn't, then you need to go back and re-import the EQ ones. They're on the desktop, so you can just go in and say you want to edit it, you can see it. You can see them all here. They're all here. All right. So the value Q is here. So if you ever need to go back. All right. So in the case of exchange, all right. So exchanges of VM, right? All of these drives are iSCSI drives, every single one of them. So you got to be careful about that. Now, when you reboot, sometimes they don't come back. So you have to come into the initiator and reconnect. Now, the thing about it is that you have to try to map it up, like map it to EX logs to whatever it is. These are all snapshots. So you don't want to reconnect snapshots. You want to reconnect like these things. Like first, you see that says first mailbox log.
Yeah.
That is first mailbox log. So you see how those kind of maps. So you want to go through. It's a process. So you want to go through and map it. Now, why does that happen? That happens because if you notice our favorites, right? Because you're saying it's like, okay, if it should be a favorite, when you restart, it should come back. It should, but if you see the favorites, there's a lot in here. So sometimes I just go in and delete all the snapshots. You want to keep these. Anything that's appended with a date, it's a snapshot you can delete. So I can remove that. I can remove that. All right. So now, if you look at it, like there's 4 mailbox databases, right? There's a first mailbox database. There's a secondary mailbox database. There's a VIP database, mailbox database, and there's a OCIS database, mailbox database, right? So there's 4. Why do we have 4? Because we want to separate, because there's different quotas and things that are applied to each mailbox database. The first mailbox database, I think, is by default is 1 gig. Second mailbox database, I think, is the same thing. VIP mailbox database, I don't even know if it has a limit, to be honest. Probably like 5, 6 gigs, who knows. And the same with OCIS DB. Now, obviously, for the sake of space, you don't want to throw everybody in the first mailbox database. If you notice that we're 35 gigs free, right? So I've had to move people over because, of course, people want more space in their mailbox. So I've had to move people over. The idea really was to have first mailbox database and second mailbox database kind of be half and half. So you could kind of round robin when you create exchange accounts. You put some people here, you put some people there. But you know, the secondary mailbox database was kind of created after because we were realizing like, oh man, we're running out of space, you know. So I've been migrating some people. I've only did 2 so far, but then you know when we started talking about moving people to Google Apps, I kind of just stopped. Right, so that's something to also think about. So anytime I get requests for people to increase their quota, and I see they're in the first mailbox database, I just move them over to the second and then increase their quota. Right? So you have to be very wary about space. Also, when Aperture runs, right, it's supposed to run with log truncation. So every time it doesn't run, it doesn't truncate the logs, and these logs grow. Right? Now, you may say, okay, right now it's pretty small, and that's true. But you can see, like, these are just, like, these grow like crazy. This is just from today. Like, they grow like crazy. So if you leave it unattended after a week, you're going to be out of space, especially here. Right? Like, I can't warn you enough. If it doesn't back up and truncate in a week, you're gonna have everybody in the VIP mailbox group complaining that they can't get their mail. Okay, now, you can say, all right, why can't I go in and manually delete these? These are transaction logs. You know about databases, you know you can't just go and delete transaction logs. You actually have to delete, commit, and then, commit, then delete. Especially if you want to try to roll back, you won't be able to. All right. Now, that's really it from the architectural level. Now let's go into the actual application. Now, before I get there, there's a lot of things. This is Exchange Management Shell. It's all PowerShell. So it would help if you kind of learn some Exchange, I guess scripts, because there's no more. They're going in the direction of not putting things in the GUI. It's going to be more command. So yeah, just get used to that. It was a little bit of a joke for Lewis when I was in there, because he was like, all right, where's the GUI? It's not there. So, all right, so let's go to the Exchange. Okay, so this is the Exchange Admin Center. Most of the day-to-day you can do from right here, I guess. All the basic administration.
You move people from here or not?
We can do migrations from here, yes. It's a little better to do it from the command line, but because you can put more options. But if you have to migrate, you can do it from here.
Best place to migrate from is PowerShell.
Yeah, I mean, I like it better.
Yeah.
So let's say how you migrate. These are people that have migrated recently, but how you migrate is really when you just search me, for example. So here I could look and see how much space I'm using, or I'm using the default data settings. It's all PowerShell. Yeah, so move to a different. Yeah, okay, cool. So you go to migration, you click the plus sign, you add the person's name. So let's move mine. So I want to move mine to the second mailbox database. So it takes a while to do, but that's really it. So the move process really just copies all the mail from one database to the next. All right. We don't do archiving on our exchange, so never worry about archiving. Right? We always do archiving to the user's computer. All right.
How increase the space?
Increasing space, sure. So increasing space, we have a unit.
Yeah, I was,
So increasing space. It's fairly easy. Go on mailbox usage. See that somebody's I don't know his was on it.
sure.
So Audrey Kelly, two gigs. But so to increase space, right? Go to more settings. Now, this is usually checked, and that's the default. So I think so. Anytime you have to make changes, you go here. And I try to increase in half a gig chunks, but it's up to you to do whatever. But just keep in mind where the mailbox is and how much space is on that. All right. So in her case, let's say we want to increase it to 2. Changes to 3. So all it means is that she's going to get an email when she hits 2.5 that says your mailbox is 80% or 70% full. She's not going to be able to send when it hits to 3, and she's not going to be able to send or receive when it hits to 3. And that's it. That's saving. All right.
How about creating a new one?
So creating a new one, you have to have a domain account. Okay, and it has to be enabled. All right. Now, do not, I can stress this enough, do not, like a lot of times people say, well, I don't really use my exchange account. Can I delete my exchange account? Now you're tempted to go and say, okay, go to the exchange and hit delete. Once you hit that delete, you're deleting their AD account as well. All right. So, and you're not moving it to the recycle bin in AD. You're moving their account. You're deleting their account. So if you want to disable someone's exchange account, if someone doesn't want their exchange account, it's better to disable it. Do not delete. Okay. So if someone wants a new account,
Can you see if there's one for, Trisha Query GUI?
let's go here. First thing you want to check if a person has an exchange account is any Patricia COA.
The GUI.
If someone has an exchange account, their email will always be populated with @exchange.km.edu. If it's not, it means that more than likely they don't. All right. So also, this is another thing that comes into play is that these things, when Exchange is populating its directory, is going to pull this information from AD. So if that information is not accurate, and someone says, well, why in Outlook, when I hover over a person's name, they say I'm here and I'm not here, change it to AD. Okay. And then it goes back to having that proper information on the form and all that. But to create an account for her, right? Go here. Just copy her username real quick. Makes it easier. I'm gonna put that as the alias. And search for a name. Double click. Right. These things things, change everything's going to be going to more options. Always go to more options. Mailbox database, and you want to put her in the secondary one. And let's see. So if we look now, you can see that gets populated with her exchange account. So she now has an exchange account. So once she opens Outlook, if she's never opened it before, she can just hit next all the way through, and it'll pull up her exchange credentials. All right. Now,
What do we set their initial password?
it's her AD password.
Oh, okay.
As long as she's logged into her computer, she can really just open Outlook and it'll configure itself. Like we want to keep the default settings like cache. I go back and forth on it, but I think we should keep cache mode enabled, so that she can just literally don't have to send anyone. There you go. Open Outlook, and it'll configure itself. Especially now because we're in Exchange 2013 environment. We'll have to get it done. All right. So okay. So there are times where people are going to say, oh, like in the case of Archie Kelly wanted to be able to see Carla Willis's, or a better example is like, I want to see the HR conference room calendar, right? So what I usually do is, okay. So before, when these were created a long time ago, they were actually created as mailboxes, but now we don't anymore, and I'll show you how to create that afterwards. But a lot of these legacy conference room calendars and things like that were created as actual exchange accounts, right? So you can go in and they get mail and everything. So you treat it as an exchange account. But let's say, someone needs access to the discount. What I usually do, come in a mailbox delegation, and I give myself full access. And then I go to my exchange account. I go to my exchange account. And I add those additional mailboxes, right? So in this case, the mailbox name was resources confidential calendar. So it's here now. Okay. So now I can share it out to specific.
With the legacy cameras, you had to actually do a machine to do it.
No, I mean I always did it this way. It just makes it easier. So like in my exchange account, a lot of times I had like drive admissions, human resources, I had a tech, I had all these legacy calendars just there so that, because people will call, hey, I need access to read this, and you just go in and share it to them. It just makes it easier. Now, however, so let's say, so I can just say, okay, well, I want to change, give mental read access. I could just make him a reviewer and hit apply, right? You could get as granular as you want, but that's really how I do it. Okay. But now, however, if someone wants a new, let's say someone new says, okay, well, I want a new shared calendar for a room or something, I wouldn't create a mailbox anymore. I'll go to resources, right? And you can just create a room mailbox and do it this way. That makes it easier, as I did with Liberty Hall. And at that point, you can just okay. So in the case, like I delegate it to someone there and let them be in charge of distributing access. Okay. So, okay. Let's see. Unified messaging, don't confuse that with Call Express. Has nothing to do with that. Our Call Express is actually a mailbox on here. Sometimes we may have to go in and clean it up because it's over quota. But you see, like, they're actually mailboxes, so don't confuse that with unified messaging. At some point, sometimes, some users may call and say, "Oh, I'm unable to search and exchange." At that point, you got to check the database health. Um, I'm looking for, like save them on desktop. I recommend do the same as well. To literally open the command management shell, um, and check. You want to check on these, um, make sure index enable is set to true, right? Um, in the mailbox itself, there's actually a file right here. This is the file that does the indexing, right? So all the indexes in the journaling is saved in this folder, right? So if for whatever reason it becomes corrupted, right, and sometimes it does, let's see, this for- yeah, in the case where it does become corrupted, um, you have to delete this file, this folder, I'm sorry, and restart the indexing process, right? So they all have services. So, there's a bunch of exchange processes. Like as you get familiar with the exchange itself, you're gonna understand what each one does. But some of them are pretty intuitive. Um, so you stop the search service, you delete that file, and you restart it. Now it takes a while, especially because depending on the database, like we could look at this and we could see that database is a little over 74 gigs. So that's pretty big. So it takes a while. So like if someone complains about it today, and you do that, it's gonna take, a few days for it to fully index. So while that's doing that, it's gonna return inconsistent search results, right? So, and it's better to just monitor. Like I have a handful of queries that I run every so often just to check because you just want to be on top of it before you guys. Yeah. Right. Now, another thing you will notice on this Exchange box is you'll have an agent, a McAfee agent, but there's no virus scan per se, right? Now, do not install virus scan on it, and that's because Microsoft doesn't recommend it, as well as Exchange has its built-in anti-spam um, / malware detection that it uses, but that's, I guess, streamlined for Exchange. And a lot of times, you put a virus scan on there, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to find that your mail is not going through. It's very, very slow and things like that. Right? As it is, like, our Exchange box is kind of on the lean end. So you see like we're at 71%.
While you're doing that, remember in morning you did a forwarding for that lady?
Yeah.
I'm going to send you a text that they want as a order reply. Can you put that there?
I put it's not on the email.
No, it's something, I don't know what was on the email, but they want this. I'm going to forward you that.
Okay. All right. It's really the basis of it. It's I mean, there's a lot to exchange. So
Just sent it.
so every once in a while it's gonna complain, rebooting. That's fine. Now we're at C12 right now. You can see when I install that. They're at C16. We don't want to go to 16, but we want to keep like in that realm. So before we were at 4 and we were out of compliance, Microsoft would, now they would help you. So we don't want to be too far behind. So maybe at the top of the year, we may have to look into installing another SKU. Now, the updates itself is not very difficult. It's really just the next kind of thing. But yeah, it's got to reboot. But now it just it requires more babying than anything else, right? So you just have to just watch it, and the more you start doing, the more you realize you have to do kind of thing. So yeah.
Can we get an exchange account for me now?
For you?
Yeah.
You can create one yourself, man.
This is your test. Let's go.
You should be able to, no problem. What else? Mail flow is important. Let's see, let's go to receive connectors. Now, yeah, that's fine. And we'll figure that stuff out. This is important as well because that's for the journaling, right? There's actually an account called Barracuda in there. Do not ever touch that because that's where all the mail goes to before it, does the journaling. What else? Yeah, it has a malware filter. It takes care of itself. This MS test, that's when I was working with Microsoft, I created that database, so there's really nothing in it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't use DAG groups, database availability groups. Now certificates, Exchange needs a specific certificate. See when it expires. Okay. No, you have to do it before it expires. If you don't, nothing is going to work. Phones, nothing. I know we renewed the wildcard cert, but you have to go in on each server and put in new certs on each server. So, that's one thing to be mindful of. Now, there's a few, because the way we do things right now is that we put certs on the actual boxes. We may want to think about just putting a cert on the load balancer and run everything through the load balancer. But that's something where we would like to be. But for right now, every one of our SSL page, every one of our HTTPS pages has their own cert, and so you have to go and buy a cert. And so I think there's a few. This is one of them. So yeah, I mean, most of them expire around the same time, so just keep that in mind. Um, renew the certs. Okay, so what else is there? I think that's really it without diving too deep into it. Um, anything else with exchange? So we're gonna jump from exchange to we're gonna do KMS and stuff today, right? Licensing. Okay. So let's do KMS first. Let's see here. Now, KMS KMS2 is actually the box that handles all our licensing, not to be confused with KMS KMS. Anything still here? Okay. Never mind. I had to leave it. Good. Okay. So, all right. So how do you handle KMS? But it's really kind of a zero touch kind of thing. You don't really. This is not something I look at every day, but it's just something that you need to be aware of, right? So if you notice, like this is where we're at, right? So we have a volume license for KMS for 2012 R2 with Windows 10, right? And what that means is that anything that's Windows 10 and below is licensed, right? So this gives you an idea of how many licenses this has issued. So we're up to like 100,000 already. 6,000 of which have been licensed. All right. Two things you got to worry about, because it does happen. So this tells her where to come from, right? This tells whatever machine that comes in, as soon as they hit the DNS server, it says, all right, well, here, go to KMS 2 for your licensing information, right? Now, any machine that comes in here that's Windows um, Server 2008 with KMS, it's going to try to publish something here. So we have to make sure that every once in a while we come in and check that no server is coming in and saying I'm the KMS server, because then you'll have a bunch of people saying, oh, well, this is not licensed, this is not licensed, that's not licensed, or whatever. So if it hasn't happened in a while, it's been a couple of years, but sometimes when we buy servers, especially with Nicole servers that we didn't really touch, it try to publish a service location not to come and be deleted. Right? Now, I set this up as static, and I did that because I wanted it to not have to rely on any manual process, on the automatic process. All right, so this is very important. Now, Office as well as the OS, it's all licensed through here, right? Machines that are on the domain, they keep their license for, I think, 30 days, right? Before you have to check in. Okay. So
They get the message saying, your license is not valid, you just need to log in.
no, they don't even have to log in as long as the machine is on the network. So what they have to do is either plug in, VPN, and whatever. They don't even have to log in. They actually have this before. So now these numbers are important. But if you ever run into a problem, Microsoft will probably take you through this, but this number shouldn't really go down. That's a bad thing when that starts going down. So like that. That's really it. When you have to put in new licenses, for example, if we have a KMS for like Server 2016, the process is really simple. Like you get the key, you like we don't use AD base, right? So we use KMS. You could literally KMS. Your key, install your KMS host key, and paste it in there, right? There's some caveats with KMS. It has to wait for 25 machines before it goes out to Microsoft and licenses, but whatever you do with that, that's fine, right?
You just install the KMS keys.
Yeah, I just did it. So the only reason why you have to install a new one is the 2016 comes out. Our key doesn't change. It's just we'll need one for AWS. And that's it. That's really all it is in KMS. Office is done very similarly, except it's command line. We do the same thing, basically. Right? So when Office 20, I did 16. So when the new Office comes out, whenever this, put it in it. Now, all right, this is the licensing server. This one is a little more tricky. I recently updated to Server 2012, so hopefully you won't have to worry about. Hopefully it'll just be fine. It's a headache to build this stuff. All right, so I'll just go here. All right, so here's, we do ArcGIS, we do AutoCAD, MATLAB, Minitab, SketchUp, SolidWorks, Stat Tools, as well as SolidWorks. As well as SPSS. Okay. So 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. So those eight pieces of software, they are licensed through here. Now, a lot of these applications are, the license files are generated with the disk ID. Now, which means is that if the hard changes, you basically got to go after all vendors to try to get new license files. The only thing we're up, everything to okay. So right now, this one is for SPSS. If you look, you'll see that the license for SPSS 21 and 24. There's only 8 people using 21, and none using 20. We have 3,000 licenses. Okay, this is when it expires, which means that you have to go to SPSS and to every year it's a new key. All right, so it's not zero, hands off. You actually have to. Now, so now, it says I set it up to allow for immediate checkout. So if you see someone can hit checkout with the licensing server for 180 days. Campus, but after days, once again, regardless of how it out, is you can't use it anymore. 21, 24. And really, that's the most important one. SolidWorks and AutoCAD are hands-off licenses. Like, we're not up to date, but it's lifetime. So unless you have to go in and enter a new license, you really don't have to do anything with that. With AutoCAD, however, the licenses are set up a little weird. Okay. Let's see if we can take a look at that. Okay. So how it's set up is that we have a 30 user license. However, 25 is, I guess, carved out for the computer lab, and we have another, should be another 2. We have another 2 that's carved out for tracing film. All right, so let's say for whatever reason the lab starts using 30 Machines, only 25 order, and the rest is for campus plan. And that's because of the way they bought. But they're both configured on this because AutoCAD said I'm not issuing two licenses, so we have one combined license. Different versions of AutoCAD though, and that's how it knows. Tracy Feldman uses AutoCAD 2007, so she can use all the way up to 10, and the lab uses 12. MATLAB, pretty straightforward, hands off. You know, I'm not going to go through that. Mini tabs and SketchUp. I mean, these are all applications that we're not really, we don't have a support contract for. So, ArcGIS, on the other hand, we do. We're licensed for 60 clients. Up to ArcGIS 10. So 9 and 10 can use it. And that's really it. QuickBooks we don't license to. That's we don't manage that. That's we install the licenses and it doesn't check into any of our servers.
Those are the ones that we manually do it, right?
Yeah, so what's going to happen is that next year, someone is going to have to call in their QuickBooks. Now, they're going to say that they don't do that anymore. You have to push them. And they'll take the 250 user licenses to 1 user license. And then you have to go in and reinstall the clients. Any questions? Any more questions on those? Okay, so I'm gonna go to DHCP and DNS. I'm not gonna dive into DNS too much, you guys. What? Both you, you and Bill, you guys got that. Charlie, Bill, you guys got DNS. Again, the 2 DNS servers sit on both our domain controllers. We have 3 domain controllers, 2 virtual, 1 physical. EC4 is your finite. That's still on server 2008. So at some point you want to upgrade. Keep in mind, with DHCP, we have split scope instead of clustering, which we have to talk about. Actually, Marquis is doing some stuff that he shouldn't be doing, but we'll talk about that later. But for right now, DNS sits on both our two of the 3 domain controllers. All right. We have Kane.edu, KaneAlumni.org, KFoundation.com, and KFoundation. Now the bottom 3, it's all Ophelia's fault. Blame her. They've done some.
It's a history thing.
Yeah, yeah. So we try to appease her as much as we can on that. Now, there's not many things that I do here. Sometimes she'll bug me and say, "Oh, well, she needs a new A record." Yeah, but that has nothing to do with this. Yeah, this is. She has too many servers, man. She needs to consolidate. This is all. There's a server in our server room called KNet-REWS that runs this stuff, the foundation stuff. Okay, right? Yeah. That runs this stuff. I like to say why we posting those A records was before me Chester just said, listen, man, just take care of it.
I'll tell you some other time. I'll tell you some other time.
Sure. Outside
Is
of
it
the
PG rated?
Alright. Anyway,
Please,
cybersecurity,
it's a long story.
that's because some, as Lewis would say all the time, some momo decided that cybersecurity center wasn't enough. They wanted to put www.cyber. So that's why we have this right here, and that's the only A record that's living here. All right. Now, I hate personally to have it like this because that shouldn't be a domain, but whatever. So, Charlie Bill at some point, press their cybersecurity to say, look,
We have the same in the external.
oh, you do? What the hell? Wow. www.cybersecurity.k.
Yeah.
I'm
not sure.
Okay. Well, it's kind of confusing. I don't like it. So, like, it pains me when I see that, but whatever. This is all DNS stuff. Whatever. Force is, the two DNS servers, whatever. Now, all right. So, A record, C name, I'm not going to go over that. You guys know that. We created A record, created C name, whatever. Now, you may ask, all right, why do we have like computer names in here at some point? I'm not even going to go into that. Just know that it's there. Some of it is actually before I do that. So you guys know the two forwarders; those are Kojak. Right. These are all generic. These are all
The roots are
yeah. These are all, what's the word? Default.
Mhm.
Right. Now, at some point, I was toying with the idea of only allowing I was toying with the idea of only allowing certain things to read the DNS just because we have a huge security hole as far as DNS is concerned. Like anybody can stand up another DNS server and have it replicate. So that's one thing we got to be aware of. But I was toying with the idea of tightening that up. So what I did was I just allowed authenticated users to control, right? DNS admins can do all that, but any machine that's on the domain can only read. Right? Now, that's a good and bad thing. The good thing is that if I need to ping king.edu, I can. I just can't put a record in here. Right? That's why these things just pop up, but it is what it is.
And
Why is
these
that?
manual entries are,
No,
these are dynamic, right?
these are dynamic, right? Which means that at some point the machines are supposed to come in here and update and clean up whatever. All right, now, yeah, now it's good if it's machine joined domain. If it's domain joined machines, but then as you see, it's not always the case, right? Because we allow sometimes someone may come in and plug into an open port and it's whatever machine and comes in on DNS. All right, so that happens sometimes, but I try to slow that down as much as possible. I don't know how it's static on there. I don't know what the hell that is, but that's really it with DNS. Right? It's just maybe at some point you guys could talk about collapsing our DNS servers into, instead of having 4 of them, maybe think about just 1, 2.
Mhm.
Because DNS is DNS. Like, it really doesn't like, yeah, there's really not much to it. Alright. So DHCP on the other hand, it's a little different. Now, back in the day, there was really no failover clustering, so the powers that be decided that they were going to do split scopes, right? So which means is that subnet 62 half lives on one DHCP server, half lives on the other. Which means is that if one DHCP server goes down, you only lose half your scope.
Mhm.
But that's the problem. You lose half your scope.
Right.
You know, so now strong recommendation would be to, you know, do cluster it. The same way I did with you know, the print and file servers. You can do it with DHCP. The benefit though is that it doesn't have to be as complex. DHCP allows for failover clustering, application level failover clustering. So you don't really need to get, you know, clustering on the OS level. Alright, so that's the beauty about it. Now, we don't do IPv6 really here, but and it's hardly you won't see very many reservations. Reservations are really set to you know, wireless APs. We tend to static IP printers and things like that, so you know, you won't really see reservations. Now, depending on what scope you're looking at, you'll see smaller lease times. Especially on the wireless side, lease times are small. Sometimes it gets as small as like 15 minutes. You know, but again, that's our esteemed network admin did that. You know, so now on certain VLANs, you're going to see like lease times of a day, 2 days, maybe. You know, so that's one thing to keep in mind. However, what Marquis has been doing recently is that he has been assigning scopes to specific a specific DHCP server, and that's why that is a bad thing. Is if the DHCP server goes down, then your whole scope goes down, which is really not a good thing. All right, we should really consider either keeping the split scope model or going to a model of clustering. You really shouldn't be assigning scopes on one that. And that's really it. Like you could go in and take a look and see what scopes are looking at what, but it's very simple. All right. Now, a lot of times you may not see, like for example, you see something like this and you're like, where the hell is that? You just gotta figure it out. All right. Now, as much as I pestered Lewis, I was able to get this at least. So at least I got up to here. The rest, you're really gonna have to just kind of figure out on your own. Now, there are times where you'll start to see like red bangs that really tells you like that the pool is full. You know, there's really not much you can really do. You could go and kick out a bunch of people, but you know, that's really what Marquis has been doing. But it's not something that I would really recommend.
Mhm.
But for right now, until we start to figure out how we can, I guess build a network, assign more IP addresses, things like that, there's really not much we can do. Hasn't happened as much as it did before, because what Lewis did was he started natting. So if we see a lot of 10.250s, like those are natted addresses. So that's really it with DHCP. Hopefully, when we get a replacement for Lewis, we can start cleaning this stuff up. But for right now, I guess status quo is just alright, so like these are really only reservations I got done, but this is what it looks like. You see reservation outfit. So that's really what a reservation looks like. Now, my recommendation is to stick with, assigning IP addresses manually until maybe we get up. Maybe we might move away from, DHCP and do like blue cat and things like that. But for right now, so yeah. Any questions with this stuff?
Why did you do reservations?
Okay, so why did I do reservations? Because at one point I was toying with the idea of, because I didn't like, like for example, Lewis and I just had access to the IP list. So we knew what IP addresses were assigned to what machines. Now, I was working with Matt and Marquis, they didn't have the IP list. So for example, if they're saying like, well, how do I know this machine is assigned to this? They are looking at the HCP, and I'm like, all right, to make it easier, let's do reservations across the board for these guys. So I started toying with that idea, and then, I kind of pulled back because he was saying like, all right, well, if we're going down the IP list way, let's just stick to that. But, these are just the Crestron devices that are in the university center. That's the only thing on the production side, and then all the wireless APs. We probably see reservations for. Yeah. So it's really that. That's really that. Yeah. What else? Yeah. I guess I think that's it for DCP, DNS. All right. All right. So. All right, so we really have five clusters that M820 has built, right? Do you have anything here? Oh,
Might have some.
I'll just recruiter stuff, but we tried to isolate. Yes, isolate. This is mostly all the servers that Bill deals with on this cluster between the R710 and the well, actually all three, the R710, two R710s, the R720, and the R810 is just for Citrix stuff, right? So ESX7, 8, and 9, these all hold up Citrix stuff. Now, this machine this is Chris's stuff, Chris Rustic, that handles projection thing in Hutchinson, the big screen. Why we want to virtualize that is because the machine would go down, crashed last time, whatever. So we virtualized it and we put it in a Citrix environment. But that's really the only thing that lives in that Citrix environment. That's not. Everything else lives out here. Now, the RA10 was really reserved for our tier 1 servers. These are like heavy hitters, right? So these 2 of yours go, right? That'll call Express, our Infotel stuff. These 3 are Blackboard, 2 are CSGO. These 2 are the new Chronos environment.
How did PDB get there?
Huh?
How did PDB get there?
I know, I was going to ask you. Chronos Task and RPDB. So these really are tier 1. Now, if you're asking yourself, all right, well, how come Exchange is not there? Because, I let Chester tell you that story, but in this thing, it was like he was kind of told to build it really quick. And, we didn't have this many. Okay. Now, how I provision storage to these guys? All right, so if you guys are wondering why these are yellow bangs, is because I enable SSH on them. All right. So why do you enable SSH on a host? Because I had to do some stuff with ripping out a VM. All right. So you actually have to SSH to that. Now these other banks here are storage banks. Usually it's like when we start, if I provision, let's say 1 gig of space to these guys, when they start creeping up to 1 gig, we'll start giving you these, because there's no room for snapshots, right? So really we kind of did away with Commvault used to take snapshots, so you have to have room for snapshots. Now you don't really, unless you're doing an upgrade separate from your Aperture backup. You want to take a snapshot of the machine so you can roll it back. You can take snapshots, but just be wary of the amount of space that you have on the drive. Yeah.
So Commvault is not used anymore.
Yeah. Well, Commvault is still attached to some servers. I just have to kind of get Timmy to move some stuff off of it. Like for the most part, there's some servers that actually have both. I don't think it's very many. I think it's less than 10. So yeah. So how we provision space to the VMs. At first, what Chester was doing was this. He just started carving out a bunch of space, right? So he'll say, all right, here's VM data 1. I'll give you 600 gigs. VM data 2. These are real generic. If you want to continue doing that way, that's fine. But I couldn't eyeball this and say, okay, what server is living on what storage? I couldn't tell, because there could be 4 or 5 different servers that's living on VM data 1, right? So what I started doing was I started carving out specific storage for specific machines, right? I could say, oh man, that's a lot of work for sure. But at least I was able to tell, like, all right, well, I know exactly what's on this. I know it's exactly where I'm at. So how we provision space, you have to log into one of those servers that has access to, that 10 network, yeah. So right now we use, is that this one? So this IP address of EQ group manager. These are all the volumes on here. Like I was saying before, Maniac created specifically for certain servers. I mean, at that point, you could keep that up or just say, okay, well, you know what, I'm going to carve out 6 new ones, have it be 2 terabyte each, and just have a bunch of servers instead of either way. I don't really necessarily see a downside. Now there's 4 of them. The VDI is just specifically just assigned to the Citrix environment. Now that has a composite of SAS and SSD drives, and so you have to be mindful of that. All right, so I used to always wonder why Chester Wells complained about space. We had so much space, but then I started realizing, that's why I complain about space. But yeah, so don't let this number fool you. Like, we do have tons of space on the EQ, but then when you start talking about backups and VM's ability to do stuff, and then I kind of understand why it was doing it. All right, so we have EQ 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. They're all over there in the server room. These bangs right here are because we're way back on firmware. Yeah. So firmware needs to be installed. Just note, you start installing firmware, downtime, and we're talking about downtime across the entire environment.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you wonder why, like, okay, why did you do that? That's why. It's never a good time. All right. Yeah. All right. Okay. So over here by the block. All right. So carve out a new volume. Very simple. You go and create a new volume. Name it. Say we have a new server called test. All right, you can choose which one. Stay away from that one, of course. So in this case, you look and you see, like, all right, well, this one has 20 terabytes of space free, so let's use that. This tells you the size. Now, the maximum that we could go to is 2 terabytes. Don't let this fool you. It's because of our ESX version. Like we're at 5.1. Now 6 came out, so that's another undertaking that we're gonna have to do is upgrade from 5.1 to 5.5, and then from 5.5 to 6. Now, one thing to note is that you kind of have to do it in cluster, right? So we can't say, okay, let's do it on 4 and gonna leave 5 and 6 in the dust, so you gotta do 4 and 5 and then 6, and then you can go and do 10, 11, 12. So it says the version we're at 5 now. Yeah. Now, VMware will support you for now, but they recommend us to go to 5.5. When I talked to VMware maybe 4 or 5 months ago, they were pushing us to go to 5, and that's before 6 came out. They were pushing us to go to 5.5. Alright, so let's say we want to do the maximum we could do is 2 terabytes for the sake of just demonstration. Let's keep it as a gig. We never want to thin provision. I'm not sure of a specific reason why we want to do that, but carve out the space, give it the space. Now you could play around with the snapshot reserve all you want, but again, unless you're planning on doing, running on snaps, which I never recommend, just leave it as default. All right, so we want to copy access controls, and that's all it's doing is saying like, all right, well, because you have to give whatever host access to view this with volume. So you can go in and define whatever access policies, but I usually just copy from another one. So if I know I'm gonna create a new volume for the R710s, I usually just copy from one of those from runs in one of these things. So I'm just gonna go to the Blackboard one. Now, do you want to allow simultaneous access? Always choose yes, right? If you choose no, it will only live on one host, right? And one host meaning that if you provision it and you add the storage for 4, it can't be motion over to 5 or 6. So if for whatever reason 4 starts getting bogged down, it will not be motion to 5 or 6. Alright, so we copy access control. If you see here, it gives us the access points. This is going 11, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, ComServe is there for whatever. 10, 11, 12. Yep. Cool. Keep that as default. Okay. Now it's that. Okay, test is here. Let's see status. This is access. So now we can go in here and see access now. We can have it. We can go on ESX 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, and 12. Alright. So now we go into VMworld. Storage. this. Cool. So now if you go in, have storage, this is the new one I created. That next, you want to format it to, it's like I would see no option in choosing 3. I see no reason to choose 3. 5. It's a data store. Some space. Oh,
Isn't that 1 GB?
that's not good. I shouldn't set it so low.
We have to bring it up to 2 GB there. Yeah, check that out. Check them out. Try that.
So now, my KNet dash test drive should come up here. So now when I want to go in and say create a new virtual machine, let's take a look. Alright, so it depends on, again, what it is you do for whatever application you want.
It's right there.
Pick whatever OS you want. In this case, let's do this. Next. Alright, pick whatever VLAN you want. Post-production server we're going to. There's sometimes, subnet 2 is growing kind of big. For a subnet 1, but for a lot of times we do a subnet 2. Our recommendation is always the DMX net 3. We'll get about, I think, like a network speed of 10 gigs as opposed to 1 gig over here. And here you can provision the amount of space. I don't know if they'll not let me, but we always take provision 0 layered or lazy 0, sorry. And here's your virtual machine. You can go ahead and install, configure your RAM, CPUs, and install your OS on it. Now, a lot of times, I wouldn't necessarily go through this manual process unless I'm creating a machine that really doesn't allow itself to be built from a template. And that's usually because we don't have a template for it. But alright, so these are the templates that we have for as far as services concerned. So we could really just deploy virtual machine from this template. Now, you have to modify the settings afterwards because obviously the template has, a specific set of hardware requirements well defined. So you have to edit it. Now, a while ago, Aperture was saying that our templates are fragmented. So just remember, if you deploy from template, just go in and defrag after before it goes into production. Or, create a new template. And I'm not against that either. VM in itself is, like a job. So, I'm not going to really dive into it much deeper than that. Yeah. Any questions about VM? Now, there's a few defined networks in our in our VMware, so you can't just throw, because, a few times some people have asked me, like, all right, well, can I throw a machine from library in there? It's not going to work. There's no network defining, for VLAN 5 in here, so it's not going to happen. Unless you go in and you have to actually do some configuration on the host side. And, I'm not going to go through it too bad. So
all your labs virtual labs are being managed.
virtual labs are different because virtual labs, but we'll talk about Citrix another day because that's like the concept of that. Virtual labs is not virtual as you see virtual here. It's two different things. Like the concept of virtual labs, like it depends on like what mechanism you use. Virtual machines,
right?
And we have, physical machines that are streamed in an image. Two different things. So we'll save Citrix for another day because it even matters, the job itself. But just sticking to, the VM environment. I mean, we have a lot of servers in here, a lot of which I manage. So, yeah, just I guess get familiar with each one of them. Now, vCenter, that actually runs this what we're using. So that machine is probably the most important machine that we have here.
The core.
Yeah. So now this machine itself is very hands-off, but it runs the SQL Server backend. SQL Server backend is actually on the machine itself. And sometimes, as with all databases, it gets a little screwy, and you have to go in and kind of truncate and do things like that. Now, you want to ask yourself, all right, well, the vCenter is down. How am I going to get into it? And the only thing I really say is good luck. It takes a lot of work. I've had the experience to do it once, but luckily I had Chester, and Chester and I found our way out. But it's not fun. So, I think we have a support contract with VMware called VMware. Of course, they're going to try to kick it back to Microsoft, but you have to be able to get in, and there are ways. Now, just so that I don't leave you guys hanging. Right now, when I log into vCenter, when I open VMware, I log into vCenter. That's the machine we were talking about before. But let's say vCenter is down, you can actually change this to the IP address of the host, right? But that, you can't use the username and password I was using before. You actually have to use the root of it. So it's not like, it's dreary, but it's not good if vCenter goes down. Okay?
These hosts are not managed.
The hosts themselves, no. Now, the way the hosts, because these run ESX, like ESXi, that's the name of the operating system. They're like Linux-based operating systems. So if you see here, a while ago, Chester actually went ahead and, because to install Open Manage on them, you actually have to do it this way. So Chester went ahead and did it. And I'm not sure if when we blew out the old one, if it was added back, but the versioning is off, so I couldn't do it. But that in itself takes a lot. It's not one of those things where, like an open manage to install on the server, you just kind of push it out. With in the VM where we actually have to create a VM, it's a little difficult. But the hosts are not on open manage.
So if we have problems with these things, hardware-wise,
Kind of toast. Some of them are out of warranty, of course. So most of them are out of warranty. So
do you put these on third party?
maybe we did. Again, I can't. I don't want to make it like bleak, but I don't know. I sort of to check. You guys have any questions? Cool. Well, I think it's a good place for it to toast. I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go into this, because we could talk about like emotion and all that, but like my recommendation would really be for whoever's going to take this over and train it, because like I kind of learned the hard way, and I don't know if like, and it when facing a problem, to be learning at the same time is kind of rough. And then also, it's like there's a few things that I've done like may not be best practice. I don't know. I never took formally. I never took the VM training. I saw the classes online through Linda, but maybe it'd be helpful for someone to do that as well. I do have some videos, but they're kind of Chester lines, but the same with Exchange. I do have the class that Chester took in Exchange, so if whoever you assign to do them, I could hand that over. But for me, it was for the Exchange portion, it was very helpful. There was no way in the world I could have took over Exchange without that, because Chester left a little bit of a kind of half-baked, and honestly, like I'm glad that we're on this side of it now, but it was a little tough. Training videos are really helpful. So my recommendation would be, watch the videos. If you could stand up an Exchange environment and, you're at home or on, a laptop, separate network, it helps. There's a lot of things that you don't want to touch on Exchange just because it's just like, you have that one person calling, I can't see any of my email.